Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says progress was made during a meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong Un on Sunday. It was the fourth visit to the country for America's top diplomat. He had a 2-hour meeting behind closed doors with the North Korean leader. Secretary Pompeo later traveled to South Korea, where he said his meeting with Kim Jong Un was, quote, successful.
I don't have much to add. I will certainly tell you about our conversation. But we had a good, productive conversation, and President Trump represented our many steps along the way, and we took one of them today with another step forward. And so this is, I think, a good outcome for all.
Pompeo said he worked on a second summit between President Trump and Kim Jong Un while in North Korea. Markos Kounalakis joins me now from San Francisco. He's a foreign affairs columnist for McClatchy News, as well as a visiting fellow at the Hoover Institution. Markos, thanks for joining us. Negotiations between the U.S. and North Korea had previously been stalled before Sunday's meeting. Last time Secretary Pompeo was in Pyongyang, Kim Jong Un wouldn't even meet with him. What changed since then to bring the two back to the negotiating table?
Well, we don't actually know what changed, but something must have changed. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken the meeting. He wouldn't have gone there. He wouldn't have had the meeting with Kim himself. You know, diplomacy is very much like pregnancy. It takes a very long time to gestate, right? And the thing that we don't know about this diplomatic dance is it the gestation of an elephant or is it the gestation of a human? And we'll see what happens. I mean, it really is hard to predict, especially as you saw with this clip you just ran. Secretary Pompeo is not going to share with us what it is that's going on there. So we have to just assume that certain progress is being made. Otherwise, they wouldn't be having these meetings.
Well, so that was going to be my next question. The Secretary of State said progress was made. So do we know anything at all about the specific advancements?
Well, sure. I mean, we know what we've done up to this point. For instance, the North Koreans have stopped testing certain aspects, missiles, and they're not exploding any bombs, which is a very good thing. On the American side, to try and build confidence and move towards some negotiation posture and an ability to have confidence-building measures, the United States has stopped doing military exercises. They're not going to have these military exercises with the South Koreans. So we know for a fact that there is some steps being taken by both parties, and we don't even know to what extent other parties are making efforts. We know that the South Koreans, for instance, have opened the equivalent of an embassy in North Korea. So there is absolutely progress being made. We just don't know if we can assign it exactly to these negotiations.
So to follow up, we know that North Korea wants to see, quote unquote, corresponding measures from the U.S. before it denuclearizes. What are those?
Well, I imagine that North Korea would want a maximum amount of denuclearization from the United States, whether it be submarine-launched ballistic missiles that are off the coast in Southeast Asia or Northeast Asia. I imagine that they would want to see a reduction in American forces in South Korea. I think they'll ask for the moon. But the question is, how do you then get to a point where you can agree on certain things? The United States would like, over time, to have verifiable, look at the stockpiles within North Korea. You know, reporting from North Koreans on where those stockpiles are, where those weapons are being developed, and where they're currently being housed. So both parties want a lot, and the negotiation process and ideally the summit process that is going to come out of these negotiations will get down to more specifics than the original sort of memorandum of understanding that came out of the Singapore summit.
Well, the State Department said Sunday Kim Jong Un offered to allow international inspectors into a nuclear test site dismantled in May. But there was no mention of the country's main nuclear facility, Yongbyon. So how do we measure progress with North Korea? Is it a situation where a little bit is better than nothing?
I think a little bit is always better than nothing, right? And the fact that you're able to have this conversation, this dialogue at the highest levels. I mean, Secretary Pompeo with the chairman of North Korea is significant because they are able to bypass the middlemen and others who have interests in not or in in trying to stall or alter the types of progress that may be made in a diplomatic negotiation. We don't know what he's giving away. We don't know what the president is willing to give away in the negotiation process. But yes, there are ways. So first of all, the talks are progress. Secondly, we know that there is this Yongbyon, as you've mentioned, agreement to actually dismantle the plant. It's a nuclear facility in North Korea, and they've agreed to do this. Maybe it's the South Koreans checking whether or not they're doing it. Perhaps it's an international team. I'm sure the Russians want to get in there. They're making noises about wanting to participate in some way in this negotiation. So it's fluid. And as we know, they're not sharing. So we have to guess to some degree.
So Secretary Pompeo said Sunday it is inevitable that North Korea would talk to its Chinese neighbors. How is China playing a role in U.S.-North Korea relations?
Well, that's a really important question, Elaine, because we don't know how the Chinese leadership is reacting to the types of things that the United States is currently doing. That includes the tariffs, first and foremost. And this week, as we heard, Vice President Pence had a very, very hard speech aimed at the Chinese leadership and suggesting that they were interfering in our elections. So what's unclear is to what degree does China have influence over Kim Jong Un right now? And to what degree can they stop the negotiation or even reverse the negotiation if they want to as a means of extending the negotiation that they're having with the United States? That is an unknown, but that is really critical, and you're right to ask that question.
Finally, Markos, what's next? How soon should we expect a second summit between President Trump and Kim Jong Un?
Well, if it were up to President Trump, he'd probably do it on November 5th, the day before the election, to try and take as much of the credit and as much of the attention of everyone right before the midterm elections. I don't think that's going to happen, but who knows? And we don't even know where this next summit will be. So it'll be somewhere. But I think what we can count on is once this long or short negotiation process comes to its conclusion, it will eventually end up in the Oval Office or somewhere at the White House if there is something like a peace treaty being signed or a real verifiable denuclearization agreement that is something that we can make sure is going to stick. Then you'll probably see President Trump bringing Kim Jong Un to Washington, D.C.
Right, November 5th. I better clear my calendar just in case. Markos Kounalakis, thank you so much.
Thank you.